The road stretches endlessly beneath the weight of winter, the trees bending under a thick, suffocating silence. Snow falls in slow, deliberate patterns, masking the land beneath a white veil. A car sits at an awkward angle, its front end crumpled from impact. The hazard lights flash, a rhythmic, desperate signal to the empty road. But there is no driver, no footprints leading away, just the car, abandoned, as if she had vanished into thin air. Emily Carter was a promising college student with everything ahead of her. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't the type to disappear without warning. But on a cold February night in 2004, she made a decision that defied logic. She left behind her dorm, packed up her belongings, and drove toward the mountains, alone. What happened next has puzzled investigators, haunted her family, and sparked endless speculation for 2 decades. Here's what we do know. Emily's car was found wrecked on an isolated stretch of highway, but she was nowhere to be seen. A witness, a passing driver, reported seeing her standing by the vehicle, seemingly unharmed. He stopped, offered help, and she declined, insisting she had already called for assistance. Minutes later, she was gone, vanished, without a trace. But that's where the facts stop making sense. There was no record of a call for help, no signs of struggle, no tracks in the snow leading into the woods. It was as if she had been erased from existence. Her family insists she wouldn't have run away. Authorities initially suggested she had fled on her own, that she simply wanted to disappear. But if that were true, why did she leave behind her wallet, her phone? Why would someone determined to start fresh vanish into the freezing night with nothing but the clothes on their back? And then there's the note. A letter discovered in her dorm room days later. A message that suggested she had secrets she never intended to share. Some say it was a farewell. Others believe it was something much worse. In the years since Emily's disappearance, whispers have circulated. A dark vehicle seen idling near the crash site. A connection to a string of other missing women. A possibility that the truth isn't just lost, but deliberately hidden. Her case remains open. The questions remain unanswered. And those who seek the truth must confront a chilling reality. Sometimes people don't just disappear. Sometimes they are taken, but by whom and why? That's where the mystery begins. Emily Carter was the kind of student professors remembered, not just for her sharp intellect, but for her quiet intensity. She excelled in her coursework, the type to double-check every assignment, to question every theory. But in the weeks before she vanished, something changed. She started missing classes, avoiding friends. When asked if something was wrong, she'd smile, tight-lipped, forced, before changing the subject. Her roommate, Lisa, was the first to notice. At night, Emily would sit on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone screen without touching it. She'd leave for long walks and return hours later, her shoes wet from the damp grass, the scent of cold air clinging to her clothes. And then there were the searches. Her laptop history, later examined by investigators, told a story she never shared aloud. Directions to a remote stretch of highway, articles on how to disappear without a trace, the effects of extreme cold on the human body. It painted a troubling picture. Was Emily planning to leave? Or was she afraid of something? The last person to see her on campus was a professor she had confided in once before. She stopped by his office unannounced, late in the afternoon. She didn't sit down, didn't linger, just stood in the doorway and asked a question so strange that it unsettled him for weeks after. If someone needed to vanish without anyone finding them, how long before people stop looking? He asked if she was okay. She hesitated, just for a breath, before shaking her head and leaving. Emily Carter wasn't the kind of person who disappeared. But maybe, just maybe, She was the kind of person who knew she would. The town itself was small, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, the kind of place where nothing bad ever happened. At least that's what people liked to believe. But if you asked the right people, in the right places, they'd tell you the truth. That road, the one where Emily's car was found, had a history. Decades before, a woman named Claire Hastings vanished under eerily similar circumstances. Car found abandoned, lights still on, but no trace of the driver. Search parties combed the woods for weeks. They found her purse, her coat, but Claire was never seen again. Some blamed the weather. The road was treacherous in the winter, its sharp curves a graveyard for careless drivers. Others whispered about something else, about something older, something no one could explain. And then there were the phone calls. A week after Claire went missing, her parents received a call in the middle of the night. The line crackled, filled with the sound of breathing. And then, just before the call ended, a whisper, "I'm still here." The call was traced to a payphone miles away. When officers arrived, the booth was empty. The receiver dangled from the cord, swaying gently. Claire was never found. Emily had read about Claire. She knew the stories, so why did she drive straight into the heart of them? Emily woke early that morning, but not for class. Her emails, sent before dawn, were brief, almost clinical. A simple notice to her professors. She'd be absent for a week. No explanation, no follow-up. By noon, she walked into the campus bank and withdrew a modest amount in cash. Not enough to start over, not enough to suggest she was running. Just enough for something temporary. Surveillance footage from a liquor store later that afternoon shows her at the counter, hands gripping the bottle just a little too tightly. The cashier, who would later describe her expression as somewhere between anxious and already gone, asked if she needed help carrying her things. Emily shook her head, forcing a smile, and walked out. The automatic doors hissed shut behind her, and then she drove. The road she took didn't lead home. It didn't lead to a friend's house or a familiar getaway. It stretched into the mountains, winding through dense trees and empty stretches of highway. The kind of road that, once you're on it, makes you feel like the rest of the world no longer exists. At 7:27 p.m., a local resident placed a 911 call. There had been an accident. A car was stuck in a snowbank off Route 116. The engine was still running, hazard lights flashing against the snow. The responding officer was minutes away, but before he arrived, another witness saw her. A bus driver making his evening route slowed when he spotted the wreck. Standing beside the vehicle, partially illuminated by the glow of her taillights, was Emily Carter. She wasn't injured, not visibly at least. She wasn't waving for help, wasn't trying to move the car. She just stood there, arms crossed, staring down the road. The driver rolled down his window. "Hey, you okay?" Emily turned, slowly, as if pulled from a distant thought. "I've called for help," she said. Her voice was steady, rehearsed. "It's fine." But the driver saw something in her expression, something that didn't match her words. "Are you sure? It's cold out. I can wait with you." "No." Her eyes flickered past him, toward the trees. "I'm okay." The driver hesitated. The way she stood, the way she spoke. It was like she was waiting, but not for him. Minutes later, he pulled away, and when the officer arrived, she was gone. No tracks in the snow leading into the woods, no footprints in the opposite direction. Her belongings were inside the car, purse, bags, unopened bottle from the liquor store. Only two things were missing, her phone and her ID. Like she had never been there at all. The investigation began with the assumption most people wanted to believe. Emily Carter had left by choice. She was an adult. There was no blood, no sign of struggle. The car, despite its position in the snowbank, had minimal damage. It looked like an accident, the kind that frustrates more than it injures, a moment of poor judgment on an icy road. But when officers searched the area, something didn't add up. They brought in tracking dogs, hoping to follow Emily's scent. The handlers led them carefully through the snow, past the car, toward the woods, and then nothing. The dogs stopped, not near a stream or a thicket of branches, not at a cliffside where a fall might explain her disappearance. They stopped in the middle of the road, their noses, which had been so confident just moments before, lifted hesitantly. The handlers urged them forward, but they only circled in confusion. The scent, strong, unmistakable, simply ended. As if Emily had been lifted off the ground, as if she had vanished into thin air. For the first few days, authorities believed she might be hiding, that she had taken shelter in an abandoned cabin or hitched a ride with a passing trucker. But no one matching her description had checked into any motels. No security cameras caught her at gas stations or convenience stores along the highway. And then there was the detail no one could explain. If Emily had walked away, her shoes should have left impressions in the snow. If she had collapsed, or crawled, or run, there would be tracks. But there weren't. Her last known location was at the edge of the highway, near the wrecked car. And then, nothing. The search expanded. Helicopters swept over the trees, their floodlights cutting through the frost-covered branches. Volunteers combed through the underbrush, calling her name until their voices turned raw. No sign of her. Not then. Not ever. Her family, desperate for answers, insisted she wouldn't have run. Yes, she had been acting strangely. Yes, something had been weighing on her. But Emily Carter wasn't a girl who just disappeared, at least not without help. Witnesses who had been in the area that night started coming forward, each with a story that added to the mystery rather than solving it. Some reported seeing an unfamiliar vehicle, a dark SUV idling near the bend in the road. Its headlights were off, barely visible in the snow-heavy night. A few recalled catching a glimpse of a figure inside, but no one could say for sure if it was Emily. Had she gotten into the car willingly? Had she been forced? What made this detail even more unsettling was that over the past decade, similar disappearances had been reported along highways stretching through neighboring states. Young women, stranded by car troubles or late-night accidents, seen standing alone in the cold, and then never seen again. But Emily was different. She had been acting strangely in the days leading up to her disappearance. Her dorm room had been packed up, not in a hurry, not in the frantic way someone fleeing an immediate threat might, but neatly, methodically, as if she had known she wouldn't be coming back. That detail raised an unsettling question. Had she planned this? Some investigators suggested she had staged her own disappearance, that she had been unhappy, that she had orchestrated everything, the car crash, the vanishing act, as a way to escape a life she no longer wanted. But if that were true, why take nothing with her? No bag, no extra clothes, not even her phone charger. It was as if she had intended to step out of that car and walk straight into something waiting for her. And then there were the locals. People who had lived in the area for generations whispered about that stretch of highway, about the way headlights sometimes flickered when passing through, about how radios cut to static, about how, once in a while, someone simply disappeared. A legend had haunted the town for years, one that children told in hushed voices on dark winter nights. They called it the Watcher in the Woods, a figure glimpsed only in the periphery, never in full view, never in direct light. Some said those who saw it wouldn't know until it was too late, and some claimed that if it chose you, you never made it home. Of course, stories like that were dismissed. Folklore, nothing more. But one detail changed everything. A note, tucked inside Emily's desk, beneath a stack of old papers. It wasn't dated. It wasn't addressed to anyone. But the words. I see it too, and it knows that I know. Emily's parents never moved away. Others might have left town, unable to bear the weight of unanswered questions, but not them. They stayed in the same house, kept the same phone number. Every night, the porch light remained on, just in case. Her mother kept Emily's childhood room untouched, the walls still lined with posters from a life that had been abruptly cut short. The bed was made, the books stacked neatly on the desk. A frozen moment in time. Her father spent years walking that road, retracing the final steps she might have taken, talking to anyone who might have seen something, anything, that night. They never got closure. Her younger brother, just a teenager when she vanished, had grown up in the shadow of a mystery no one could solve. Now an adult, he believed the investigation had been mishandled. The police assumed she left on her own. He said, in an interview years later, but that never made sense. Emily wasn't running from something. She was looking for something, and whatever it was, it found her first. But what was she looking for? Theories swirled, each one adding another layer of doubt. If she had left voluntarily, why didn't she reach out? Why had her scent trail vanished in the middle of the road? And why did authorities seem so quick to let the case grow cold? Some believed law enforcement had overlooked key evidence. Others suggested that someone close to Emily knew more than they had admitted. And then there were those who thought the truth was something far worse. The note found in her dorm room was never explained. I see it too, and it knows that I know. What had she seen? What had been watching her? The road where she disappeared had always carried whispers. People spoke of strange shadows, of headlights dimming without cause, of figures appearing and then vanishing just as quickly. Had she walked into something no one could understand? Had something reached for her from the darkness that night? We may never know what really happened, but what if the answer isn't lost? What if it's still out there, waiting to be uncovered? Emily Carter vanished on February 9th, 2004. But what if she never truly left that road? Somewhere, in the stillness of that winter night, she was there one moment, and gone the next. No footprints leading away, no signs of struggle. Just an abandoned car and a trail of questions that would never fade. Her family still waits. They still check for updates, hoping for something, anything, that could explain what happened. But the deeper you look, the harder it becomes to separate fact from fear. Some say she left on her own, but if that were true, why did her scent disappear in the middle of the road? Others believe she got into a stranger's car. But if so, why was there no sign of a struggle? No calls for help? And then there's the note, the cryptic message she left behind. A warning? A confession? Or something else entirely? I see it too, and it knows that I know. What did she see? What had been watching her? Even after all these years, people still report strange occurrences on that road. Cars stalling for no reason. Shadows moving just beyond the tree line. A whisper, so faint, so distant, you'd swear it was just the wind. Unless you listened closer. Was Emily Carter taken by someone? Or by something? We may never know. But one thing is certain, the road is still there. And sometimes, when the snow falls just right, people say you can still see footprints that shouldn't exist. This story isn't over. What do you think happened to Emily Carter? Drop your theories in the comments. We read every single one. If you enjoy exploring real-life mysteries that will leave you questioning everything, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. There's so much more to uncover. And next time, we investigate a case that will change the way you look at reality itself. You won't want to miss it.